microcomputer. Inside the microcomputer, we are going to have a microprocessor. Second one, microprocessor, it is nothing but a chip, and this chip, it is going to have the central processing unit, and central processing unit, it is nothing but the arithmetic logic unit and the control unit. When we are going to call it as a control unit, it is going to control all the instructions. When we are going to call it as an arithmetic and logic unit, it is going to perform both arithmetic and logical operations. So this is what we were talking about. Next one, we were talking about bus and bus structures. When we are talking about bus and bus structures, we mean to say that there are three types of buses. The very first bus, we call it as address bus. The second one, we were calling it as data bus. And third bus, we call it as control bus. Nice. Now, when coming to the address bus, we mentioned that it is unidirectional. When coming to the data bus, we call it as bidirectional. And again, when we call to the control bus, it is going to be a unidirectional. Next thing what we should look into was when we are going to call it as a unidirectional bus, it is going to be in control of CPU. Similarly, when we call it as a control bus, it is again in control of the CPU. But when it is a bidirectional bus, it has a compatibility with all the components. It is going to have compatibility with all the components. Now, when we are going to call it as address bus, it is going to hold addresses. It is going to hold addresses. So when we are going to call it as an address, in general, it will be in a hexadecimal address. If you are working with C pointers, etc., you will have a glimpse of what was an address and how we are working on it. Then we are going to have data bus. So data bus, it is going to hold data or address or any relevant information towards transferring of data. It is going to be taken up with the data bus. It is going to taken up with the data bus. I will just give you a small example, then we will have an idea. So memory is made up of cells, and every cell is going to have two parts. One we are going to call it as address part, another we are going to call it as a data part. I call I, it is going to be a cell identity where it is pointed at as 0xFF0F and the value was 15. That means int I is equals to 15. So now this cell, it is going to store the data type integer with a value of 15 and the cell is going to be called as I here. Now if I am going to say printf of I, then it is going to display 15. If I am going to say printf of address of I, so because we are going to use a pointer, then it is going to display the address. Now, why we are putting this discussion here? 15 will be taken up with the data bus. 0fxx will be taken up with the address bus. So this is the primary difference we have to interpret between the two components. So 0xFF0F will be taken up by the address bus and the value inside it, that is 15, will be taken up with the data bus. Next comes the control bus. So all type of control instructions will be handled out with the control bus. All type of control instructions will be handled out with the control bus. Now what is all type of instructions? I can set the computer, that is turn on the computer. I can restart the computer or I can stop the computer. Similarly, I can make something to read from the memory, something to write or store into the memory. And similarly, from the input output devices, I can make a read operation. And from the input output devices, I can make a write operation. So there are a lot of control instructions, control set of content, which is prevailed by the control bus. So when we are talking about a microcomputer, the first and foremost thing we should understand about the control unit. Next, the arithmetic logic unit. Next, the microprocessor, thereby the word length, thereby the address bus, data bus, and control bus, and followed by the converters. Followed by the converters. Now what is converter means? There are two types of converters. One, we call it as A by D. Second one, we are going to call it as D by A. When we are going to call it as an A by D, we call it as analog to digital. And when we are going to call it as D by A, we call it as digital to analog. So what is the role of A by D? What is the role of D by A? So I have a sine wave like this wave, and this wave has to be converted into zeros and ones. Now it is going to be an analog information because it is a sine wave, cos wave, etc. But 0110, it is going to be a digital information. CPU will understand only the digital data. CPU will understand and work with the digital data, that is the binary data, zeros and ones, nothing else. So computer doesn't know anything except two content, either 0 or either 1. So whatever language we talk, computer doesn't know. That language has to be converted to the binary form, to the digital form, and thereby it should be given to the central processing unit. And central processing unit will process that information in digital form, and it will revert back to the devices. Our devices are going to be again in analog form. Our devices are going to be in analog form. So what happens was, computer is going to give a digital data, and that digital data has to be converted to sine wave, cos wave, tan wave, whatever it is. So the role of converters are going to be a crucial element when we are constructing a mobile phone, when we are building up a laptop or a desktop. So when I am going to call it as an speech recognizer. So in Google, what we do is we turn on the microphone and say, what is weather today? Then Google Assistant or Siri will come and tell, yeah, today's temperature is 15 or 20, like that. That means our voice, when it reaches to the digital device, it is in sine wave or cos wave. We call it as an analog data. Now, computer cannot understand this analog wave. So internally, the first step, it goes to the converter, and converter duty or responsibility was to convert this analog data to the digital data. So this was the foremost perception what we have to understand when we are going to work with the AYD converter. Okay, so CPU will get what is the weather today. You have asked Siri or you have asked the Google Assistant. Now Google Assistant will know what it is going to tell us. 26 is today's weather, like that. Now it has to be transferred to analog information. So how it is going to convert it to analog information means the entire processing, it will search in the servers, then it will take up sensors. So everything is going to be processed internally, and finally it says, yeah, today's temperature is 22, today's temperature is 24, it is rainy. In this way, it will answer you. So you are able to listen. Digital data, you won't be able to listen. Digital data, you have to uh, uh, be converted via a D by A converter, and this D by A converter will give you a voice accent. So that is how we are going to work with these converters. Now let us put a holistic view, a simple structure of the microcomputer. So the simple structure, yeah, what I was mentioning in our earlier discussion. One, we are going to call it as ports. Ports are the positions where we can connect our earphone. Ports are the connections where we can connect our mouse. So the positions where we are connecting our earphones to the laptop or to the mobile, the positions where we are connecting our Bluetooth uh, content, the Bluetooth signal point, or the position where we are connecting our mouse to the laptop or a desktop, that position we are going to call it as IO port. So we want to talk to the central processing unit. We want to talk to the central processing unit, but our device will not be directly connected to the CPU. They have to be connected to the ports, and thereby they have to be brought to the central processing unit. Fine. One important thing we should understand was a laptop is totally packed, and inside that CPU memory will be there. A desktop is totally packed in a cabinet, and we assume it is a computer. But what exactly is the difference you should understand was memory is different, central processing unit is different. So this was the key takeaway you should understand. So when we are going to call it as a CPU, there will be only two components. One, we are going to call it as control unit. Two, we have to call it as arithmetic logic unit. So only these two are going to be the elements. So for the input output ports, we have the input devices. So I have connected my earphones to this. So now the mic, I am going to call it as an input devices. Now you are also listening via your earphones or Bluetooth set, etc. It as a via a output device. So input devices and output devices are directly connected to the port. Fine. Next thing, we are able to talk, and that information was to and fro from the memory, to and fro from the central processing unit. Obviously, we call that element as data bus. So via the data bus only, we are able to exchange our information. So I was able to talk and you are able to listen. So this was all happening in digital form. That means it is temporarily storing in the random access memory. It is going to be processed via the central processing unit, and thereby we are able to listen it with our output ports. I'm able to speak, that is via my input port, that is the input device. So for every event, address is going to be assigned by the central processing unit, and it is going to be a unidirectional bus. It is going to be a unidirectional bus. So control bus, I just take back. Again, it is a bidirectional bus, and data bus is a bidirectional bus. Only the address bus is going to be the single directional bus. So this is the basic architecture or a simple architecture of the microcomputer. So as far as microcomputer is going to be concerned, we were talking about one, the input devices. Two, we are going to call it as an output devices. So input and output devices, they cannot directly talk to the central processing unit. They are going to give their inputs to the ports. So ports are the positions where we can connect the input devices and we can connect the output devices. Next one, we have the core part called as a central processing unit. So central processing unit, it is a composition of two parts. One, we are going to call it as control unit. Two, we are going to call it as arithmetic logic unit. So in control unit, it is going to give control operations for the entire computer, memory, etc. Arithmetic logic unit, whatever instructions we are going to give, those instructions are going to be processed by the arithmetic logic unit. Next comes the memory unit. So in memory unit, we can either temporarily store the data or either we can permanently store the data. So temporarily storing the data, we are going to call it as the random access memory. Permanently storing the memory, permanently storing the data, we are going to call it as the read-only memory. So in read-only memory, data is going to be written and it can't be rewritable, etc. So this is all regarding the memory part. And how a data is going to be communicated, how data is going to be exchanged between among themselves means, one, it is going to be taken up with the address bus. Two, it is going to be dealt with the data bus. Three, it is going to be controlled with the control bus. So these are the different components. So our discussion went independently to each and every component, to each and every component separately. But now here we are going to holistically present you all the components at this point of time. So this is what we are going to call here as a simple structure of the microcomputer. Then there are three more words which will look up to finish out this overview of a microcomputer and specific structures. So one, we are going to call it as a hardware. Two, we are going to call it as software. And third one, we are going to call it as a firmware. The lowest level will occupy the hardware component. The intermediate level, the middle level, it is going to be occupied with the firmware, and the topmost layer we are going to call it as the software layer. So at the software layer, we are going to build up our programs, and these programs, they are going to operate the hardware. They are going to operate the hardware. So when there is a bare hardware, we cannot process a memory. Then there is a bare CPU chip, we cannot process it. But obviously, we need a software which will link up, which will bring the hardware components into use. So that is where this a relationship between the three layers, top layer, middle layer, and lowest layer, is going to taken up. Now coming to the word called as a firmware. Coming to the word called as a firmware, it is going to be a software built. It is going to be a software built directly on the chip. So the best example, we are going to be called it as embedded systems. We are going to call it as the embedded systems, or we are going to call them as microcontrollers. We are going to call them as microcontrollers. So the software, it is directly built on the hardware. So this was the key takeaway for the definition of the firmware. So firmware, it is nothing but the embedded system or the microcontroller. So there is no more layer, again a software layer above it. So I was just mentioning software, I was mentioning firmware, and then I was mentioning hardware. Now this software is purely brought to the firmware, and there is no software layer. And similarly, the hardware is also brought to the compromised to the firmware. So entire thing, it is going to be manipulated at the middle level. So the hardware is compromised, software is compromised, both together they are unified and they are brought to a single location, and that is what we are going to call here as a firmware. So the best examples, we are going to call it as an embedded systems or a microcontrollers. So we were talking about the household embedded systems, that we call it as wash programs in the washing machine, the microwave, ovens in the homes, the TV remote, or followed by the AC remote, or so there are the car, what we can say, so the lock unlock with the car, etc., of the car door systems. So all these are some of the examples which are going to be holistically falling up in an embedded system, that is the vending machine at the coffee shop. So when a button is pressed, only 100 ml of coffee is going to be given to the cup. So a program was written on the chip, and when the button is pressed, that program is activated. That means the software was compromised to a firmware, the hardware was integrated to a firmware, and it is meant only for that single purpose. So that is where the advantage of this firmware was taken up. So coming to the software, we do have two types of softwares. One, we are going to call it as the application software, and two, we are going to call it as a system software. So one, we are going to call it as a application software, and two, we are going to call it as a system software. So the semester subjects, what you have learnt, C, Java, Python, so DBMS, MS Office. So all these, they are going to be part of an application softwares. So they don't know what computer they are working. They never bother to which computer they want to work. So they give their specification, they will give their software compiler, you double click, next, you install it, then you are going to use that software. So you don't know whatever system it is. It is an Apple MacBook, it is a Core i3, it is a Dell computer, it is a HP computer, it is nothing aware. So obviously all these will come and play upon the computer level. But when coming to the system software, there are some certain programs which need to be operated and which need to be giving you the control over the system. The very first system we are going to call here as an operating system. So this is the very first program, we call it as a bootstrap. When I press my button on a computer, the very first program will be loaded will be the operating system. When I switch off my mobile phone and I will turn on the mobile phone, first you will see Android symbol. So seeing that Android symbol, it is nothing but the operating system you are going to look. I restart my computer, I restart my laptop, the very first thing you will see the Microsoft program. You won't see Java program or you won't see DBMS, while Live SQL, etc. You will see only the first program as the operating system. So that is why we are going to call this operating system as a bootstrap programming. And of course, it is going to be called as a system software. The reason was it is going to take control of the entire system. Now, there are some friends and family members for the operating system. So, the friends and family members of the operating system will be the linker, will be the loader, will be the assembler, or the compiler. So along with the operating system, when an operating system is going to be loaded, immediately the linker, loader and assembler, they are going to come into picture. So they are, excuse me, they are going to be operated internally. They are going to be operated internally and they never expose their life to the world. So they are going to be part of an operating system, and internally the operating system is going to have these components. So now linker, loader. So when we am going to call it as a loader, it is going to load the object modules. It will load the object modules of a program to get it executed. So I want to execute the program. So obviously that program has to be brought to the memory. It has to be brought to the memory. So then only the program will be executed. So that is the thing. So I'm going to have my memory. So the very first thing, operating system will stay, and thereby the user programs will come. So when the user programs are inside the memory, then only the program gets executed. So the program should come into memory. So what is the technical term? The technical term is nothing but we are going to call it as loading. So that is taken by the loader. Next comes the word called as a linker. So linker, what it is going to does is it is going to link the object modules. It is going to link the object module. So what is object module? I'm going to say hash include stdio.h, hash include conio, console input IO header file, and then I will just write my program here. So this is one module, module 1, and this module has to be executed and has to be run. That means my program has to be linked to the C header file. My program has to be linked to the C header file. So I want a person to link the header files to my program. Until unless stdio.h is not there, until unless conio.h is not there in my program is not executing. Why? The reason was you should have a linker. The reason was you should have a loader. Until unless the object modules are linked to one another, our program will not get executed. So that is the reason why the linker and loader, they needs to be a part inside the computer. So that is the reason why the operating system's friends and family members are linker, loader, assembler, and compiler. So next comes the two words called as compiler and another word called as an assembler. Next comes the two words. One we are going to call it as an compiler. Another word we are going to call it as assembler. So I am going to have a program called as swap.c. Then what happens was when I am going to convert this program to execute, obviously I will get swap.obj. OBJ stands for object code. Then again I will run that program. Obviously it is going to have a exe file. So this is the chain. Now the definition was of a compiler was what it was telling was it is going to convert the source code to object code. So this is the basic definition of a compiler. So compiler, it is going to convert the source code to the object code. So here at this point of time, swap.c is going to be the source code, and this source code now it is going to be converted to the machine understandable language. So object code is nothing but the machine understandable code. So to this code the program was converted. So the compiler, it is converting the source code to the object code, and finally when it wants to be run, then it is going to be converted to an exe file. So obviously when I am going to open a exe file, it will be just zeros and ones. So this is all regarding the compiling. Now what is an assembler? Assembler definition was it is going to convert the assembly code to the object code. It is going to convert the assembly code to the object code. So obviously I can say swap.asm. This will be the assembly code and it will be converted to swap.obj. After that it will be converted to swap.exe. Now where was the logistic difference, or where was the hidden content going up? Means we are aware of English like language. We are working on English like language. So we are not aware of the machine instructions and how to write up these programs, etc. But as far as that swap.asm is going to be concerned, it is going to have the assembly instructions. It is going to have the assembly instructions. So move a comma b. So I can say move a comma 10. That means 10 is moved into a. I am going to say a is equals to 10. So a is equals to 10. It is going to be a high level language. It is going to be a high level language. Move a comma 10. It is going to be an assembly language. So why these are all occurring? And the reason was we have generation of computers, first generation, second generation, third generation, and fourth generation computers. So you people, you are born at the fifth generation or sixth generation, whatever you call, and from 1940s onwards, the computer evaluation has been started. The very first time there were only assemblers. After assemblers, from the second generation, from the third generation, compilers were invented. So now you are moving to the backward using a time machine. Now you are moving behind to the second generation time, and now you are understanding the assembly instructions, right? So compilers, you are able to work with C compiler or a Java compiler or a Python compiler nowadays, but these are all occurred in the mid of second generation, in the mid of second generation of computers. So, or at the third and fourth generation time they were invented, but at the second generation time the assemblers were invented, and at that time people used to do programming in assemblers, and they used to have the .asm file, and that .asm file is used to convert to the object file, and from that object file it was converted to a executable file. So this is the chain what we need to understand. So in today's discussion we talked about ports, we talked about the different A by D and D by A converters, etc. Next comes the memory part. So as far as memory is going to be concerned, we are going to use it for the storage devices. So when I'm going to call it as a memory, there are two types. One, I'm going to call it as random access memory. Another, we are going to call it as a read-only memory. So as far as random access memory is concerned, we have to call it as static. Another, we are going to call it as dynamic. As far as read-only memory is going to be concerned, we have lot of variations in the read-only memory. The very first one, we are going to call it as programmable read-only memory. Another one, we have to call it as erasable programmable read-only memory. Next one, we have electrically erasable programmable read-only memory, and after we do have these flash disks, etc. So now coming to the RAM, we are going to call it as volatile, and when coming to ROM, we are going to call it as non-volatile. So when it is volatile, if there is a power loss, data is lost. So here data is going to be a permanent. So that is the first and foremost difference when we need to understand between random access memory and the read-only memory. So if we are going to say it is a static RAM, they are going to be built on the capacitors, and the refreshing rate was very low. But as far as dynamic RAM is going to be concerned, there is a high refresh of capacitors. So they will charge, they will recharge, discharge. So all these events happen very drastically, and the data is retained as usual. So that is where this dynamic sense of data is going to be presented. But as far as static is going to be concerned, the capacitors are very low, and it is not up to mark. So this is the basic difference between static and dynamic. In dynamic random access memory, the capacitors will discharge and charge, and that too, this will happen very most frequently. Next comes the read-only memory. In read-only memory, what we are going to call it as, there are four types. One, we are going to call it as programmable read-only memory. Two, we are going to call it as erasable programmable read-only memory. Three, we are going to call it as electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. Now, what will be the differences? So when I'm going to call another word, so RAM, the pet name for this read-only memory, the pet name for this read-only memory, we are going to call it as maskable read-only memory. So I will call maskable, you will call ROM. So there is no change, right? So even if people call it as random access memory, or people, read-only memory, or people call it as maskable read-only memory, the same sense will come. One, we are going to call it as permanent. So these we call it as PROM. That is nothing but the programmable read-only memory is going to happen. So we are able to write the program. We are able to write the program on the ROM chip. So the very first program, you can see when you turn on the computer, it says Intel motherboard like this. All that information will come before the OS is going to occur. So that is the configuration of the chip. So it will arrive in a tabular form. So the displaying of that properties, we are going to call it as a programmable read-only memory. So I can change that program. So we can call it as erasable programmable read-only memory. And how is this erasing happen was, it will happen with the ultraviolet light. So we have to expose the programmable read-only memory to the ultraviolet rays for 15 to 20 minutes. Then the program will be erased. Now the next comes the electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So we call it as electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So earlier we are using the UV light. You are using the UV light and the chip is exposed to UV light for 20 minutes and it has to be separated. So these are a lot of complexities in the erasable programmable read-only memory. To eliminate that complexities, then people are using the electric pulses. So when it is using the electrical pulses, so you obviously there is no need to separate the chip and the time consumption was very low. So low time consumption was happening. So these are different reasons why this erasable programmable came into limelight. So these are all the different components we need to understand as of today. So to summarize the things what we have learned for today was, we talked about the microcomputer parts. Then we went with the firmware. Then we talked about ABD converters. Then we talked about the application software and system software. And then we had enough discussion on types of memories. So this is all the learnings what we have made for today. Yeah.